Welcome to the Watkins Glen class for advanced drivers. I hope to see you at Watkins Glen, and I hope that the following material includes some items you already know, as well as perhaps a tip or two that you haven't thought about recently or may not have heard about. So before I dive in, just get yourself in the right frame of mind and think about what was the biggest surprise you ever had while you were on the track? Or what was the most unexpected thing that happened to you? Or the most dangerous thing that you've seen happen in front of you? Do you think you could have anticipated it? What mistakes might have led up to it? And most importantly, how well did you react? Was it quick enough? Could you have responded faster or better? Those are the kinds of things that prompted us to think about a topic called give yourself an out, because obviously when we're at the track, the really important thing is to be aware of what's going on around us and know how to react and how to do that quickly enough. So our normal disclaimer, if you try anything that I've suggested here today and it doesn't work, it's your fault. It's not mine, of course. More seriously, what we do on track is serious stuff. We need to take it seriously, back to our safe, serious, fun, theory that you've heard for many years. So, again, do we have an out? There's two cars behind, but you only see one of them. There's a fast car approaching you and you're too busy watching the car in front. A yellow pulls out just as you pulled out to pass, or the oil in a brake zone. I mean, we all know these things can and do happen on track. We hope they don't happen at the worst time in the worst place, but Murphy's Law says sometimes that actually does happen. So what I'm going to go through pretty quickly here are some escape hatches, a brief discussion of situational awareness, and most importantly, how to plan for the unexpected. And we'll do that in sort of two sections, some basics that I hope are not new to anyone on this call, and then some tips for ways to improve that may be new to some people on this call. And of course, none of us hope we have happen what's shown in the picture here. That's called a bad day. So just as a reminder, diving in, here's Rick By talking about survival skills. I want to emphasize the second quote here, that when something happens, it's time to slow down, not now, but right now. And that's a big theme to what we're going to talk about. So quickly, let's talk about escape hatches. If we're on track and we realize early in a corner something's wrong, whether it's oil in the track, we got in too fast, it could be lots of things. We can slow down generally in a pretty big hurry by straightening the wheel and standing on the brake pedal. And in a best case, we can stay on track like the car in this diagram did. Worst case, we're slowed way down before we go off track. This is, again, works if we see it early. In terms of places to go off track, at the Glen, there's paved runoff areas in several places, right? Turn 1, the bus stop, turn 10. There's grass runoffs in some places. But again, if we're going to use those, it only works if we identify whatever the problem is early and react to it quickly. So do you think you know where those escape hatches are? And are you prepared to use them? That's kind of what we're going to talk about. The hard part is the quickly bit, right? Deciding to bail out and deciding that quickly. And so I want to talk about, are there ways to improve that skill? And I think we've concluded that requires being aware and reaction time or being able to react quickly. So you've heard this before, situational awareness. What does it mean? Looking, how far ahead are we looking? Are we looking at each flag station the minute, the instant we can see it? Are we glancing as far ahead as possible? Not necessarily focused, but glancing as far as we can see and paying attention to what's different on the track surface. So how wide is that vision, for the pull off and run off spots? Some of them aren't in our normal line of vision at all, so that, we need to know where that room is. And how sensitive are your senses? It's not just your eyes. I mean, nose can sometimes pick up oil or antifreeze. Maybe this car, your car or a car around you is making a different kind of a noise. Let's pay attention. And part of this is knowing yourself. Are you driving consistently? Are you distracted? And so on. Another way to think about situational awareness is, think about having $10 worth of focus. If you're a student, you're spending most of that on the basics, right? On reference points, braking, gauges, and such. Not much left for the what's going on around. A more advanced driver, I hope, is spending something more like this: $1 on reference points, $1 on car fuel, and so on, with a lot left over for for being aware. Because there's lots of things to be aware of, right? Traffic, flags, runoff room, track surface. And so ask yourself, how much of my $10 is available for what's going on around me, and what could, be something that's going to affect what happens beyond just the normal driving the track. So how do we improve reaction time? We plan for the unexpected. So we think about the worst thing that could happen, whether that's oil or car spinning in front or a mechanical, and then we do our best to make sure it doesn't happen. Or if it does, we know how to respond. And we're going to start with some basics, and then we're going to dive into some advanced tips. But it starts with paying more attention on track. And as this quote from an author in Speed Secret says, sadly, many people, even experienced drivers, could do much better job of paying attention on track. And then factor in, you need to decide how hard you're willing to push. If you've got $5 to spend on attention when you're driving at 8/10, but you decide to drive at 9/10, how much of that $5 is left? It might only be $1 or 50 cents, God forbid. So how aggressive you're being at pushing yourself definitely affects, how you're going to react and how much bandwidth you have to do it. So we hope none of us ever have that happen to us as an unexpected, but here's the basics. Know where, plan where to drive off in every corner. Plan where to use those escape hatches. Look at those flag stations, look ahead, be hyper aware of traffic, pay attention to your ears and nose, stay focused. Have a trigger for yourself. We'll say more about this in a minute, but have a trigger to, whether that's eyes up that Ross Bentley likes to use, or focus, or whatever you want, just have one so that you can bring yourself back into the moment if you find yourself distracted. The other essential basic is a baseline. This is a clear mental picture of what normal flag stations look like, both from a distance and up close. A clear mental picture of what the normal track surface looks like. And if we have those clear pictures, then if something's different, it should set off an alarm bell. We need to be very aware of and sensitive to the normal sound and feel of the car, and a feel for the cars ahead and behind. And as I said a minute ago, any difference from normal, that's a warning. And this baseline is really important for other reasons, but today we're focused on it from the perspective of having it give us an early warning. Now, here's some things we can do to improve our skills in this area. First, we can visualize or do mental imagery, as Ross Bentley calls it. We can visualize, sitting at home, where and how to drive off on every corner. If something bad happened at turn 6 at Watkins Glen, how and where would I drive off? We can visualize looking at every flag station as soon as we can possibly see it. We can visualize looking, scanning far ahead, visualize being aware of traffic, being aware of our ears and nose. And very importantly, we can create that trigger to refocus if you don't already have one. So if you don't have eyes up or focus or some phrase that works for you to make sure you snap yourself into attention on track, create one, think about it in terms of visualizing, and then you can practice it on track. And think about, as you're visualizing, compare this to your baseline. As you're approaching turn 6 and you think about what that looks like in your baseline, and all of a sudden, a car is spinning, where am I going to go? That's another example of why the baseline is so important. Traffic is hard to practice on the track. We can visualize, yes, as we just said, but here's an exercise from Ross Bentley that we can definitely practice on the highway. Look at the 4 cars. Actually, that might be kind of hard. You might want to start with 2 or 3, but at least it was hard for me. So look at the 4 cars closest to you, front, side, and back, and say their colors out loud. Red, green, white, and white. Then a couple of minutes later, when they're not close to you, remember them and say them out loud again. Remember the cars, remember the position. If you do this, and I haven't done enough myself, but I've tried it a bit. If you work at this, it definitely improves your mental bandwidth, if you will, to be able to register, what's going on around. And it's certainly no harm done in giving it a try on the highway. Now, we can use sensory input sessions, which you all know is a big deal for Ross Bentley, and which I'm a big proponent of, to help develop our skills in this area as well. Because as Sherlock Holmes has said, there's a major difference between seeing and observing. I think that's a very appropriate quote for what we're trying to do here. So track surface, what's going on with the track surface, vision, smell, let's make sure we're observing, not just seeing. And I have to say, I myself am guilty of getting in a habit of just taking it for granted and not always paying, great attention to what's going on with the surface. Same thing with the car. Is there noise, a smell? And Ross points out that observing is done with multiple senses, that our ears actually process things faster than our eyes do. So if we hear something in particular, that should trigger a quick, computation in our head to say, should I do something about that? You've heard me talk about deliberate practice before. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but except to emphasize, again, we can use it in this context. We can use it on the track, with the track surface and other runoffs and so on. We can learn it. We can practice it rather with traffic, with mirrors. What would I do if? Sensory input we just talked about. We can use that with all the senses, right? And of course the car. There are deliberate practice worksheets on the website, including one for Watkins Glen. I would strongly encourage everyone to print a few of those out and use them for at least a couple of sessions. And then the fourth area I want to mention is improving our ability to focus. And the idea here is to make a routine or habit before we get on track, while you're waiting and staging or tightening belts, and have that trigger phase. Could be safety first, it could be focus, it could be eyes up, it could be hyper aware. Pick your favorite and tie that back to that visualization of what would I do if. In addition, ask yourself, what are the weather conditions like? Is something likely to change? who are the drivers in this group? Are there some drivers I'm not familiar with? How am I feeling? Am I really focused or not so much? Did I make some changes to the car? What might have changed in track conditions since the last session? If we just pay attention to these things for a minute or two and tie it back to that visualization, we will potentially dramatically increase our ability to focus and, most importantly, react when we're on the track. So to summarize, it's not what happens on the track, it's how we respond. That means we need those situational awareness skills, and we need that mental baseline that's so important to know everything else that's going on track. And here are some skills to practice that can improve our ability to react while we're on track. We can visualize. We can do that traffic exercise on the highway. We can use sensory input and deliberate practice, to focus in on these areas. And most importantly, we can have that trigger phrase that reminds us to focus on what's going on around us and keeping everyone safe. So no Q&A since this is a recording, but I do want to point out that we hope to have some informal Q&A sessions at Watkins Glen. That'll be covered in the drivers meeting, where you can ask questions about this presentation or any other aspect of driving that you have. So stay tuned on that front, from in the drivers meeting. So Watkins Glen itself, I mentioned deliberate practice worksheets. I also highly recommend printing out some track maps for your notes, just your driving notes about whether it's reference points or something you tried that worked or didn't work or whatever it is. I find making notes on the track map is extremely useful. Passing zones, this is going to be in the track pack. I'm not going to spend any time here except to emphasize that mandatory sides are a big deal. If you're an instructor, please emphasize that with your students and work with them to know the right place to pass. So last year I put together a lap of Watkins Glen in conjunction with an article I wrote after we were there last July. This is really oriented to more advanced drivers. So if you're a student watching this, the line in a couple places is slightly different than what we teach, but most of the basics are here. If you're an advanced driver or an instructor and you have questions about anything you see here, feel free to email me or ask me when you see me at Watkins Glen. But as always, don't try things that you're not sure about unless you really are comfortable trying something different, and do it at a reduced pace. So with that, here's the lap around Watkins Glen. I hope. Yeah, here we go. And again, there are reference points and notes here that are examples. They work for me. They may not work for you because they'll have 200 horsepower. You may have 400 horsepower. So take everything with a grain of salt. Idea here is emphasize some of the reference points, some of the line around Watkins Glen. I like tire marks that don't move to give me a reference point rather than a cone. And I'm just showing, when I do everything right, how I get through turn one. I use an earlier turn in for turn two at the end of the Armco here. Same apex, it's a more gradual turn in. Turn two. Normal crown as we go across the Okay, so I try to avoid the curbs, so I tend to turn in so that I'm brushing the curbs, not really using a lot of them. And I'm not able to carry my braking as late as I would like to. So I'm coming off the brakes, getting on the gas here, on the gas hard all the way here. And we want to be mid-track here. A lot of people go too far track left, and we want to be mid-track, look for the flag station, turn in, head down the hill. And we want to get in tight on those rumbles every couple laps. Lots of different lines into turn 6. Last year I was using a very early angle in and braking in that straight line, and then just bending the wheel ever so slightly more as I got further down in. I'm not sure that's the best way. It's just the way that I got comfortable with last year. So reference points here, there's good ones with this, where the tire crosses the seam. It's hard to see in the photo here, but in real life, you want to use all the index, use all the road track out. A lot of people don't use good corner to trail brake in if you're inclined to trail brake a lot. But regardless, we can't do much with the gas here for quite a while because this is a 110, 120 degree corner. Now I angle in from the bottom of the hill, right where that white dot is. Same apex everybody uses. That means a very gradual turn in. I brake into the hill, have to relax, then back on some brake as I come over the hill, and then eventually off the brake up kind of further ahead here. But it has to be very, very smooth, progressive fast because long apex, no runoff. Apex. Yeah. Brush the brakes for turn 10 and turn at the 100 mark, off the brakes and back on some gas. Some people find it useful to turn in a second. Early brake for the right-hander because we don't want to be doing much trail brake here. We want to have the car nice and balanced, so we can carry speed, onto the front straight. So that's via video. Let's take a look. Everybody knows the corner numbers. Here's turn 1. I'm just going to go quickly through this since most of you know the track. But turn 1, the turn in point, in my experience, is extremely critical. If I miss the turn in point by more than a couple inches, the corner isn't right. So I work very hard on having a good reference point and a good execution to turn in the same point every time here. If you brake too late or carry too much trail brake, it can screw up the turn in as well here. Many drivers do too much trail into turn 1. The banking is such that yes, we may need some, but we don't need as much as you would think because the banking helps just enough to help the car turn, depending on your car as to how much that actually is. Brake zone, we all know it's downhill, so it's not that favorable. Not a corner to push your braking to the last possible foot. If you brake 10 feet early here and make sure you nail the corner every time, you're going to be way ahead of the game, because if you take that 10 feet away and screw up the turn in, even once, you're going to pay for it. Again, I like reference points that don't move on the left here. Everybody knows, I think, to use the lower curb here, but not the tall one. Here's the exit with the blend line coming out from the pits, where we stay all the way to the apex of 2. The S's, no passing in any group, and the S's, Turn 2, we basically are following that curbing on the right, and then turning at the end of it, or the end of the armco, depending on your preference. Crown here, we're all familiar with, makes the car nervous. So the last place you want to lift. So if you're an instructor, obviously you want your students to be well on the gas here. Turn 3, long apex on the left. Here we are right on that crown of the road. Here we're approaching that apex, and now we're at the end of that apex. Turn 4 isn't visible, but we all know it's around the bend to the right here and faster. So this is kind of hard on the gas for turn 4. Has a flag station at the end that we all know is there to pay attention to. Line is track left here to allow passing on the right and to set up the bus stop. There is a crown in the back straight to be aware of if you're taking or giving a pass. Well, if you're taking a pass, I should say. The bus stop, everybody knows what that looks like. Here's a couple of views of it. Here's a view of it with turn 5 after. So brake zone heading into the bus stop. Here's this white line, big broad white line that you can use as a reference point for a turn in. I use the beginning of it as my reference point, but different people have different points they like to use. But it is a nice, easy to find and immovable reference point. How much of the curb you want to use is up to you. I prefer not to use them except as if I get in not quite online and I brush them, that's okay. But if you want to use more, just realize you've reduced the amount of margin that's there on the track. Once I'm at the beginning of the first left-hander here, I'm back hard on the gas all the way out to past the left and the right here and setting up turn 5. Now, as we've exited here, the bus stop literally throws us out to about mid-track, which is where we want to be. We do not want to be track left here. Even if you're giving a pass here, which I strongly encourage you to do if there's a car right behind you, because you can give a pass on the right here and neither car has to slow down much at all. And both cars can carry on with ease. So please use this passing zone, and please don't go all the way track left here or have your student go all the way track left here. Mid-track is fine, because guess what? We're going to not go anywhere near the left-hand half of the track here because of the banking. So we're just going to start to turn in on a very gradual arc as we head our way down the hill, feed on a little bit of gas, all the time looking for the flag station. We want to run along the curbing in front of that flag station for some distance. We want to brush it every few laps to make sure we're in tight. I can't believe how many people consistently leave not only a foot, but 2 feet or even 3 feet off of this apex. It makes no sense. The laces, downhill, long corner, as you can see in the overhead here. So we're blind for what seems like forever in this corner, which means requires patience. There's different reference points here. This drain marker on the right is one that David Murray likes to use. He bends in from that point into the apex and trail brakes. I can't execute that half as well as he can. So, everybody has their own preference here. The key thing is to set up the apex properly, even though we can't see it for a long time. But there's all this nice banking, close to the apex, but only for 10 or 15 feet of the track. So we want to be right on these rumbles, and we want to be into that apex at the right time to use all of this banking. The toe, we're going downhill coming in, but it's uphill, obviously. Straight in, find a reference point that works, and let the hill help the car turn and absorb the power as you start to squeeze the gas. But do get in on the apex. Again, I see people off of this apex too often. use all the exit at track out. I want you to look at turn 8 from overhead here for a second and notice that it's far more than 90 degrees. It sort of sucks us in when we first approach it, thinking it's 90, but it's longer. And so it takes a lot more patience than a 90-degree corner would at this point. And again, we're just kind of going straight in. We can trail brake in if you're inclined to do that. But in any case, we have to be patient, as we come off the brakes and onto the gas, to not get on too much gas too soon or to be too early with the apex. Very easy to do either or both of those here and run out of room at the exit. And there is room to drive off at the exit here if you do that. So be sure to just drive off if you do get in too early or get on the gas too soon. The off camber, everybody knows is really flat, but we all call it the off camber. We have this nice hill to break into coming in. I like to turn in at the bottom of this hill, as you saw in the video, and bend the car all the way into the apex. Many people go over the hill, kind of where this silver car is in front of me, and then turn in. Either one's fine, but either way, we have to be very patient with the input and the steering input and the gas, just like on the heel. Another long apex. We want to run along this curve for some distance. And again, we don't want to be early with gas or apex here, or we run out of road, and everyone knows there's no road to run out of here. In other words, there's a couple of feet outside the track, and that's it at the exit here. Turn 10, we brush the brakes at around 150, turn in at 100, and set it up. Make sure we get down on that apex. At about the point this photo is taken is a point to give a second slight twist of the steering wheel if you're inclined to do that. Some people find that helps get them tighter in on the apex. Progressive gas here, obviously it's a fast corner, but one that deserves huge respect since it's eaten more cars than I can count. And that's because people got in too hot typically and lifted. So if you do get in too hot, too early, or anything else isn't right, then just drive off. There's all this real estate out here that you can drive off onto, but this is not the last place you want to lift. Turn 11 onto the front straight, fast right-hander. Again, brake early. Depending on how much power you have, it may just be a brush or a little more, but in any case, earlier than you think, because we want the car nice and balanced as we turn in so that we can carry speed and get on the gas early here to set up the front straight. A lot of people make the mistake of trail braking too deep into this corner. Now, if you have a huge horsepower car, maybe that works, but for everybody else, we want to be carrying speed through here. Apex is earlier than it may seem comfortable, but it actually does work. And a reminder about the blend line here, everyone knows cars anywhere near that blend line area going into the pits with the pit in signal, then we have to apex outside the blend line to keep everyone safe. So again, we're going to have some Q&A sessions at Watkins Glen, we hope, and give you a chance to ask your questions then, and also tell us any input you have on ways we can make the driving event better. With that said, I look forward to seeing you at Watkins Glen. Have a good trip up, and I will see you there.